Say no to drugs, kids. Just say no. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Amari's Revenge. The goddess next door is confronted by a Nubian queen out for revenge at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in this inaugural Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Amari's Revenge in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. A Pittsburgh man allegedly pointed a pistol at a pastor inside of a Pittsburgh church.
Some terrifying moments unfolded, and they were caught on tape during a church service in Allegheny County, Pennsylvania yesterday when a man pulled a gun on a pastor. This happened at Jesus' Dwelling Place Church in North Braddock. The incident was caught on video as that service was being live streamed. The attempted shooter, who police identified as 26-year-old Bernard Polite, walked up to the pulpit and aimed the gun at Pastor Glenn Germany, but thankfully the gun jammed. Another church member jumped in to tackle Polite and disarm him.
Once they raised the gun up, I jumped up, from behind, got him from behind, struggled him down to the ground. I forgive him for what he did. I just mainly thank God that, that nobody got hurt.
The gunman was arraigned early this morning for attempted homicide, and there's a brand new update coming in this morning. Police found a body inside a search of the suspect's home last night. They say that a man had been shot to death. No one has yet been charged in that case. As for the church shooting, the pastor says he'd never seen Polite before. Court papers claim Polite confessed that God told him to do it.
Now, in this alleged incident that took place in the Pittsburgh area of Pennsylvania, Glenn Germany was preaching a sermon inside of his suburban church on Lawbringer Avenue in Allegheny County. And as he was preaching this sermon, which was being live streamed, Bernard Jr. Polite, a 26-year-old male, allegedly walked into the church and pulled a firearm on the pastor. And as he pulled this pistol on the pastor, looking to shoot him, the pastor was seen looking to try to duck and cover. And while he was looking to duck and cover, Bernard Jr. Polite's pistol jammed, and this allowed a deacon to tackle Bernard Jr. Polite and disarm him. Now, after disarming Bernard Jr. Polite, police were contacted, and Bernard Jr. Polite was arrested. And after he was arrested, they soon found a grisly scene inside of his home where a relative was found of the pastor was found dead. Now, the police are seeing this as an isolated incident, but when I take a critical examination of the alleged actions of Bernard Jr. Polite, they definitely fit the pattern and profile for beta males that I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis. Now, Bernard Jr. Polite says that God told him to go to this church and allegedly attempt to murder Pastor Glenn Germany, but that whole statement basically shows how Bernard Jr. Polite was living in a rose-colored reality that I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis, and was not living in our real world, but a place adjacent to it that is rose-colored, where everything is completely distorted. Because according to the Bible, the Word of God, His commandments are as related to the Old Testament, that thou shalt not murder, and that really shows that this man was not being led by God to participate in this crime. No, he was basically being led by demons that he opened himself up to, I believe, when he started smoking marijuana. Because when I look at Bernard Jr. Polite's behavior, it fits right in line with the kind of behavior that many weed heads participate in, because they believe that smoking this marijuana as a recreational drug is completely harmless. But what they don't understand is that most of the marijuana out here is not as harmless as they think, because what happens with marijuana is that many of the dealers of marijuana oftentimes lace that marijuana with other drugs such as PCP, angel dust, cocaine, and many other drugs, in order to keep customers coming back as their addiction overtakes them. And that's what I believe happened here with Bernard Jr. Polite. He wound up smoking this marijuana, and as he smoked this marijuana, which was possibly laced with some sort of hallucinogens, what happened was the combination of that marijuana and those hallucinogens had a brain-altering thing that changed his complete brain chemistry. And as it changed his brain chemistry, it basically made him where he was not really in a point where he was thinking logically anymore. And from a spiritual perspective, I believe what happened to Bernard Jr. Polite is that as he smoked this marijuana, he opened himself up to spirits. And as he opened himself up to these spirits, demons started to enter into his soul. And as these demons started to enter into his soul, this basically wound up altering his mind to the point where he was not really thinking critically at all. And as he wasn't thinking critically at all, he started to participate in impulsive behaviors. And that was really shown to me by the tattoo he had on his forehead, because nobody with a right mind, as related to thinking logically and critically, would go out here and disfigure themselves by putting a tattoo of a crown on their forehead. And that really shows me that this man was basically smoking this weed, and it was making it where his mind was not connected to the reality and life in the real world. And since he wasn't connected to life in the real world, he was living in this rose-colored reality. And as he was living in this rose-colored reality, he was listening to these evil spirits, believing that they were God. And as he believed that they were God, he went out here and decided to go and look to murder a pastor, doing something that completely violated the Ten Commandments that God established as related to life, and then violating the commandment that Jesus made as related to loving the Lord with all your heart, soul, and strength, and loving your neighbor as yourself, because he didn't really love the Lord to go out here and look to target a man of God inside of his church and disrespect the house of the Lord. And he also didn't love his neighbor, which was the pastor, as himself. And that was shown by the alleged possible murder he participated in of the relative of the pastor. It really showed that this male was not a person who was thinking critically or thinking logically, and I believe mainly because he was, again, smoking this marijuana. This is me speculating about him smoking marijuana, because when it comes to a lot of these guys who smoke marijuana, they think, again, it's a harmless drug until it starts altering their brain chemistry. And as their brain chemistry gets altered, what happens is they wind up not thinking logically. They start to buy into delusions that are given to them by demons, and they start to become paranoid, and in some cases they start to buy into these voices as related to believing that they're God. But this whole situation again shows me that this man was a man in crisis, and a man in a serious crisis, because he was, as I see it, possibly on these drugs, and these drugs were being the thing that led to him motivated to participate in violence. But thank God the Lord was with this pastor, and the Lord had mercy on this pastor to make it where this gun jammed. And thankfully, the deacon in the church, Clarence McAllister, was able to run up behind Bernard Jr. Polite, put his arms around him and bring him to the ground, and prevent him from participating in a heinous murder in the house of the Lord. So God was with this pastor who was just looking to preach his sermon. God had looked out for this pastor, looking out for his servant in this situation, looked out for his servant in a situation where this demon was driven to try to take the life of this pastor, telling this man that God was with him. And again, God would never be with anyone, because if he put it in his word to say, "Thou shalt not murder," he would not tell anybody to kill anyone. And that's the kind of thing that happens to individuals who don't really understand the word of God, but are being driven by demons. Demons that you get driven by and get vulnerable to when you go out here and start smoking things like marijuana. And that really fits a chapter I talked about in The Man Crisis called Addiction and the Man Crisis, because what happens to a lot of beta males is that they go to drugs because they can't deal with the problems in their lives, and they go to drugs because they can't deal with the problems in their lives because they want to escape those problems. And what I believe happened here with Bernard Jr. Polite is, as he was looking to escape from his problems through smoking weed, this is me speculating again, smoking weed, is that this basically opened the door for him to have these demons come inside of him from all of these drugs that were possibly laced with all sorts of substances like PCP or angel dust. And that's what led to him to go out and believe that God was leading him to murder a pastor. But now what's going to happen to Bernard Jr. Polite is he's going to go from a man who had the intangibles of his manhood, like his freedom, his dignity, and his self-respect, and he's going to go from being that man who had those intangibles to a man who has nothing at all, because now that he's been arrested for the attempted murder of this pastor, he is now going to have to deal with the criminal justice system and be under the authority of the COs. And as he's under the authority of the COs, he is going to be praying for mercy if he does get convicted of these crimes, because he'll be going to the penitentiary to go meet the inmates in that system of Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles, and there won't be a blunt for him to smoke to escape being traded for Little Debbie snack cakes, ramen noodles, packets of Crystal Light lemonade, packets of Crystal Light tea, off-brand lemon lime drink, off-brand fruit punch, off-brand grape drink, off-brand duplex cookies, off-brand Oreo cookies, off-brand vanilla wafers, off-brand ginger snaps, snack pack puddings, Kit Kat candy bars, Snyder's pretzels, prison chips, hot sauce packets, soy sauce pockets, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle pies, and he will also be forced to wash the skid marks out of the jockey draws of Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles after being traded and spit roasted by those fellas in the penitentiary, and after getting the front side and the back side filled up with a lot of carbon. What's going to happen is Mr. Sprinkles is going to step in and then wind up spraying the front side and the back side with his special sauce, and after spraying the front side and the back side with the special sauce, he's going to split the cheeks open and show us his backside looking like the inside of a glazed donut. And that's basically where this man will basically realize that him looking to smoke up and get high will not really help him as related to life, because he'll be dealing with the climaxes of Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles for an extended period of time, and realize that, the life of a pothead ends in a very bad way. And that's what's going to happen in this situation, because if he is charged with the murder of the pastor's relative, he's basically going to go away for the rest of his life, and go away for the rest of his life realizing that he was basically wasting his life as a man, as he's dealing with this crisis inside of the penitentiary, because he didn't get the male life skills or male survival skills to deal with life. And because he didn't get those male life skills or male survival skills to deal with life, he thought that escaping through marijuana would possibly help him, but there is no escape from reality. And the harsh reality of this man is he went from being a free man to winding up becoming a man in crisis. Now, if you want to learn why individuals like this are motivated to participate in dysfunctional and violent behaviors, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers like Draft the Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and you can also find them at big box retailers at Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to see me make more videos about The Man Crisis, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes' Illuminati, the man who rules the world, takes on the head of the global elite in this all-new action-packed John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' Illuminati in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Dark Incubus in paperback and e-readers today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.